What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this, we have Has India just rewritten the global order? Before we dive in and find out, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to support the channel by becoming a member, all you gotta do is hit the join button to receive your exclusive benefits. Let's get to it.
Has India just shifted the balance of world politics? For decades, the West has been the central force shaping the global system.
Yeah,
However, while the foundations of that order have been challenged by new geopolitical and regional blocs, none have appeared to truly undermine Western dominance. Until now. At the end of August 2025, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin, China. There, he was warmly greeted by the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russia's President Vladimir Putin in what many see as a potential turning point in world politics. But why exactly is this so significant, and does it really amount to a seismic change in international relations? Hello and welcome.
good.
My name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, and security. There's little doubt that the West, usually defined as like-minded liberal democracies, including the United States, Europe, and others such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, has dominated the international system. Through its financial clout, military power, and diplomatic dominance of global institutions, it's been the world's preeminent power bloc, often setting the international political, economic, strategic, and even cultural agenda. But in recent years, that dominance has looked less certain. As
Yeah.
other parts of the world press for their voice to be heard, the rise of the BRICS, a group including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, came to be seen as laying the foundations for a new multipolar world order.
Yeah, I think you're definitely seeing other powers in the world start to rise. And India is a power who, like they say, gives a voice to the voices, like so many voices countries for so long. And there's been one kind of power structure in place for a while now. And I think that power structure is starting to shift, things are starting to change. And yeah, this world is definitely in a shift right now. The power structure is definitely in a shift right now. Global order is definitely shift. It may not be rewritten just yet, but India is definitely taking a big part in shifting it. And so, yeah, there's a lot happening.
Yet, for many, it seemed more rhetoric than reality, not least of all due
I
to a
better pay
lack of
attention.
fundamental cohesion. However, India's sudden tilt towards China and Russia has renewed the sense that the global balance of power may finally and truly be shifting. To understand what's happening, we must step back and look at the history of Western power. Our story starts with the emergence of European colonialism in the 16th century. Following a rapid expansion in the late 1800s, especially in Africa and Asia, the European powers and the United States came to dominate the world. And
Mhm.
even after the Second World War and the start of decolonisation, what was now called the West remained preeminent. Despite Soviet competition during the Cold War and the emergence of the non-aligned movement, which brought together newly independent states as an alternative bloc, Western countries retained enormous influence thanks to their
Or
economic strength, technological know-how, and
there
soft
you go.
cultural power.
Definitely, really, that economic strength is huge. That does give you more influence with the rest of the world, and it helps you to create more relationships. And so you do retain that strength. And that sounds exactly like what happened. But now there's other countries that are starting to get more economic strength. And you're starting to see, like I said, that shift, that rise as these countries start making deals to trade with each other.
Meanwhile, bodies such as NATO and the European Union reflected Western visions of a global order built around principles of liberal democracy. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, this dominance seemed cemented. As the 1990s came to be seen as the unipolar moment, the United States became the sole hyperpower. But since the turn of the millennium, cracks have appeared. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan undermined Western credibility and the aura of invincibility. Likewise, the 2008 financial crisis undercut the West's economic prestige.
Mm.
At the same time, new powers began to emerge. China's meteoric rise made it the world's second largest economy. Meanwhile, Russia, though fundamentally weakened, reasserted itself through military interventions in Ukraine and the Caucasus and dominated international energy politics. At the same time, the global south increasingly demanded a voice of its own. All this would eventually come together with the emergence of the BRICS.
Dang,
Founded in
that's the
2009, it
fact.
soon came to symbolise the calls for a new multipolar world order, with
Yeah.
talk of reforming global governance, building alternative financial institutions, and amplifying global southern interests. And yet, for all its grand ambitions, it's often looked more like a talking shop than a true rival to Western power. Despite taking on new members, the countries involved often have wildly diverging interests. Indeed, many retain close links to the West, and Western led institutions still dominate international relations. But other groupings have also emerged. One of the most important and interesting of these is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Founded in 2001 by China, Russia, and several Central Asian states to promote security and economic cooperation, it's since expanded to include India, Pakistan, Iran, and most recently, Belarus. Today,
It's crazy. You see all these different organizations and all these different countries forming ties and bonds and deals and all of this and everything's starting to pop up. Like I said, you see the rest of the world. Like US was that main superpower for a while. Then China started coming. Now you're seeing the rest of the world starting to rise and you're seeing that US dominance starting to decrease
it's the
more and
world's
more.
largest regional organisation by landmass and population. In addition to its 10 full members, Afghanistan and Mongolia are formal observers, while 14 countries, including Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, participate as dialogue partners. More to the point, it increasingly serves as a platform for non-Western cooperation and a counterweight to Western dominance in international institutions. And it's against this backdrop that Narendra Modi's presence at the organisation's latest meeting has attracted so much attention. On its own, an SCO meeting would probably have made relatively little international news. Russia and China's close ties are scarcely new, and many of the other countries are seen as rather peripheral in international affairs. But Modi's high profile participation changed the story entirely. For a start, relations between India and China have long been tense. Indeed, for decades, India viewed China as its primary threat. The two
Yes,
countries
for
have
sure.
repeatedly clashed over their Himalayan border, including a confrontation in 2020 that killed 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers. On top of this, Beijing has supported Pakistan, India's arch rival. As a result, in recent years,
Dang, I thought it was the opposite. I thought it was 20 Chinese soldiers were killed, 4 Indians. That's besides the point. But yeah, for so long they had. When I started doing reactions, China was absolutely looked at as a threat to India, as the main threat. And then not too long ago, you guys had a little ceasefire treaty, um, whatever the situation is at the border. So it made peace. I know you guys are doing trade with each other, I believe, but you just see that relationship just kind of starting to strengthen. Maybe these two countries will never trust each other fully, but you do see that relationship strengthening and them being trade partners is, I mean, like huge trade partner. Yeah, that's a nightmare for the U.S., but we're pushing all of them into the same
India has even drawn closer to the
circle.
United States, Australia, and Japan through a body known as the Quad. This
India,
is
man.
widely understood to be aimed at counterbalancing Chinese influence in the Indo
Mm,
Pacific region. And
mm,
yet, here was Modi in China, standing alongside Xi and Putin, openly
yeah.
signalling his hope to work more closely with Beijing and Moscow. For many Western observers, this has been seen as a seismic moment. It sends the message that India could no longer be seen as an actual or potential Western partner. Instead, it's now willing to work closely with the West's key strategic competitors. So, how did it come to this? A key factor is the war in Ukraine. When Russia invaded in 2022, Western states imposed sweeping sanctions to isolate Moscow diplomatically and economically. But while Russia took a significant economic hit, it also found new buyers for its exports, including India. Despite Western pressure, India quickly began importing major Russian products, including oil, coal, and fertilizers, thus helping to keep Moscow afloat.
Yeah.
But while India
And
insisted
I feel like India's got to take that deal in a sense because it's what's best for India. And India is not a country. It is, what is it? Strategic autonomy. India doesn't have any allies, although they may be partners in certain deals with the U.S. They're not allied to the U.S. to have the same enemies as the U.S. and the same friends as the U.S. Same. They're not allied to Russia to have the same enemies or the same friends. But India is going to do what's in the best interest of India. And we saw that they're not breaking any rules. So these tariffs are unjustified, if you ask me. But yeah, if they can get cheaper oil for their people, why would they not?
that purchasing oil was a pragmatic decision based on its own national interests, it was seen by Washington as a crucial step to undermine international solidarity over Ukraine. As a result, and despite decades of work by the United States to build up its ties with India, in late August 2025, Trump raised duty on many Indian imports to as much as 50%. To justify this, he cited India's continued purchases of Russian oil as undermining his efforts to broker a peace agreement between Moscow and Kyiv. But rather than see India give in, the economic pressure has had a radically different outcome.
Yeah,
Furious at the decision, it has instead driven India's nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi closer to Beijing and Moscow. His message is clear. If Washington penalises India, then India has other options. This was more than underscored in China. As well as meeting both Xi and Putin separately and making a great show of warm relations, the three countries even held an informal trilateral get-together. And it's these images
I'm
of
telling you,
Russia,
dog.
China, and India seemingly united and closer than ever that has caused such shockwaves. I hope you're finding this
Yeah.
useful. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps
I feel
subscribe.
like it definitely will. I mean, it's gonna cause those shockwaves because, yeah, like when the U.S. is trying to get India to bend the knee and kiss the ring, there's India saying, you know what, like, yeah, we're big trade partners with y'all. Yeah, we export a lot to you guys. Yeah, you putting these sanctions on us is gonna hurt, but you know what? We're not gonna bend to your wheel. We're gonna go out here and we're gonna figure it out. When Britain left us high and dry and looted and took everything from us, we rose as a people and we figured it out. So I think the U.S. is overestimating other countries' dependence
If
on
you
us.
haven't already. Thanks so much. And now, back to the video. But does this really mean the emergence of a new power bloc and the end of Western dominance? For China, this was undoubtedly a major diplomatic victory. Xi has long promoted the idea of the global south rallying around Beijing as a counterweight to the West. Having India on board has lent this invaluable credibility. Likewise, for Russia, it was equally valuable. It's seen as proof that it's not isolated on the world stage, despite Western sanctions. However, while it may be tempting to see this as a new power bloc and even the start of a new Cold War, we need to be cautious. While in some respects the world does look increasingly divided again, with the West on one side and a group of challengers on the other, the
Yeah,
picture is far more complex than that. The
100%.
20th century confrontation was ideological, liberal democracy versus communism. Today, there's no such stark divide. China may be highly authoritarian, but it's also deeply capitalist. Russia has no clear ideology beyond state power, and India is still a democracy, albeit increasingly liberal under Modi. However, other possible members, such as Saudi Arabia or the UAE, remain security partners of the West, even as they hedge with Beijing and Moscow. Meanwhile, despite China's rapid growth, the West remains the preeminent economic bloc. In this sense, what we're seeing is not the emergence of a bipolar world with the West versus the rest. Instead, it's a messy landscape of shifting alignments with states
Yes,
manoeuvring to maximise their options.
agreed.
Some NATO members, like Hungary and Slovakia, are cultivating ties with Russia, while others in Africa and Latin America embrace Chinese investment while still working with Western institutions. Indeed, even the place of the United States is now fundamentally questioned. Instead of two neat blocks, we're seeing a fluid competition. And
Right.
while many in the global south will undoubtedly welcome the erosion of Western dominance after centuries of colonialism and decades of perceived double standards, there is, in fact, a darker side to all this. This emerging bloc is not a coalition of countries dedicated to upholding democracy and human rights. Instead, it's mostly made up of authoritarian and illiberal states. These will be given a free hand to repress dissent and entrench their power. As a result, while many people may cheer the decline of Western dominance, they may also find themselves living under far less accountable regimes. And this is why
I guess you don't really think about that when you think about Western dominance coming to an end. But I guess to a lot of these countries, we were that regime that oppressed people and held people down, like our country. And so if the world shifts, and I think what he said is not like one side versus the other, truly, it feels like the world is shifting right now. Like if you're living in this world and you're seeing what's going on around the world, I feel like, especially as an American citizen, you're feeling the shift. But you feel, I see the shift through these videos. Um, it may not be happen within the next year, but within the next decade or two, we could be looking at a different power structure. And that I've only ever lived under this structure my entire life. So, but I feel it shifting. I see it shifting.
India's decision matters so much. As the world's largest democracy, its choices carry enormous weight. If it aligns with authoritarian states, it risks legitimizing a model that prioritizes
Mm,
state power over
dang.
individual rights and places military might over international law. While Modi may see this as enhancing India's autonomy, the long term results could be the erosion of the rules based international order itself. So, has the West really lost the rest of the world? The simple answer would have to be not yet. But the
Yeah,
trend is clear. The
agreed.
era of unchallenged Western dominance that emerged after the Cold War is now gone, not least of all because of Trump's decision to alienate long standing partners and friends. A new multipolar system is clearly emerging, and India's decision to attend a Tianjin summit may stand as one of the clearest signs of this. But while many will undoubtedly celebrate the decline of Western dominance, the alternative is not necessarily a freer or fair world. It may instead be a world of more authoritarianism, more fragmentation, and more dangerous rivalries. And this is perhaps the most important consequence of what we've just seen happen in China. I hope you found that useful. If so, hit
That
us.
is a very good point that he makes. Right, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Western dominance may be taken down, but will the world be better for it? We don't know. It's been a long time. I guess some historians know, people who study history know. But for people like me, I don't know. I've never seen the world as a different place. And so, what do you think? The world changes? Do you think power will shift for the better, for the worse? Guess that depends what position in the structure you end up in. To be honest, that's all we got. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, get a bit of thumbs up, check out